Meirowitz, who is a professor at SUNY Maritime University. He joins us live from New York. Where, Mark, are Palestinians in this election?
Well, actually, I'd like to react to some of the statements that were made previously about this election. I think this is an election about Israelis, more so than about Palestinians, about the future of Israel. And I think that there is, to be very candid, consensus, although it looks very polarized. I don't think so, because at the end of the day, Israeli politics is all about coalition building. I don't believe that that's necessarily divisive, as it's been described. And from the point of view of the Washington side, once again, I think there's a misnomer in the way this was explained. There appears to be recently some difference of opinion in terms of some members of Congress and their statements about Israel, which have been very controversial. But to my understanding, the Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, are united in their support of Israel. And Netanyahu, as you know, spoke to a joint session of Congress, even while there were issues with President Obama. That is a consensus. That is a strong consensus. And as far as AIPAC and J Street, I do take issue, to be very candid, with the term Jewish lobby. That term is, to me, a very strange term. I don't know what lobby that might be, although AIPAC and J Street are very different in their points of view. And President Trump, to be very candid, did this because of his base. And I want to be very candid about that. The base he's going for is not just the Jewish vote and not just Israelis, but also evangelical Christians. If you notice that at the opening of the embassy in Washington, D.C., you had Pastor Hagin and a number of evangelicals there, as much as much in favor of it than Israelis and Jews. So I think there are many misunderstandings here about the Trump support of Israel, the Trump support of Netanyahu. So I'd like to clarify that. I think that's not very clear as to what is really going on here in terms of support for Israel, which is very, very solid on the part of the Congress.
Well, Mark, I certainly appreciate you weighing in on that. Your thoughts absolutely welcome. I want to touch on what's happening now in Israel, which is two frontrunners basically declaring themselves the victor of this election. What is your assessment of this Israeli election at the point that we're at right now?
Well, I mean, again, at the point we're at right now, as you've reported, it's a dead heat. We really don't know, although Netanyahu appears to be poised to be able to build a coalition. A number of the small parties that would have been the coalition for Benny Gantz may not be able to get into the Knesset. It's very similar to the Turkish parliament in the sense that you have to reach the threshold, in this case 3.25%, in the case of Turkey 10%. The same concepts exist in both countries. So at the present time, and I don't believe, to be very candid, that it's going to make a big difference going forward in terms of the relationship between the United States and Israel, whether Benny Gantz wins or Netanyahu wins. Again, I do recognize the fact that Trump did certain things, did certain steps, and maybe those were strategic to support Netanyahu. But again, I don't see a great difference going forward. And because I listened to Benny Gantz's talk on C-SPAN when he spoke at AIPAC, and that sounded quite similar to the sentiments in Netanyahu's remarks as well. So I don't think there's a great divide. As far as the election is concerned, it's it's a nail biter, and that we call that a nail biter. That means that we don't know how it's going to turn out. And the key to the Israeli politics is to be able to come to the president, Reuven Rivlin, and be able to present a viable coalition and form a government, and then be able to govern. Of course, Netanyahu has his issues with this corruption inquiry and other issues as well. That's obviously looming in the background. But very similarly to the U.S., we have the investigations of President Trump and the Mueller inquiry. So all of these leaders have their issues, similar issues in a sense.
So. Also, Mark, I want to touch on something that's of interest to a sector of our viewers, which is relations between the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Netanyahu, which have been, it's fair to say, pretty chilly. Both have been in power for record terms. Can we expect the relationship at all to improve from there, do you think, going forward?
You know, the way I look at it is I'm optimistic about it, to be very candid. Both of these leaders are politicking to their base. It's very unfortunate, kind of this chill that you're talking about. I don't think it's beneficial for either country. I think that Turkey and Israel have so much in common. They're two important countries in the region. They're the two countries really standing up in the region. Syria is a failed state. We have Syria with Iranian forces. We have all kinds of intervention. We have the Kurdish PKK. We've got all kinds of problems in Syria, which Turkey and Israel can certainly work together on. And I believe deep down, and something I believe in personally, and I work very hard towards, which is the idea of finding commonalities. There are cultural commonalities, political commonalities among the Turkish and Israeli people, and we just have to keep hoping and trying to move forward on that. Look, we had Mavi Marmara. That 6 years went by. We exchanged ambassadors. We had a number of kerfuffles and a number of bumps and glitches. We can get back on track for the benefit of the region. But for the benefit of both countries, it's very, very important to do that. And I think both countries will gain from it. So I'm hoping the chill will stop and maybe get better. But I can't predict the future, but I'm hopeful. All I can say is I'm hopeful that it's beneficial and necessary because the region is so, as a Turkish diplomat friend of mine once said, we live in a tough neighborhood. That is very true of Turkey and Israel. It's a tough neighborhood. And in a tough neighborhood, it's good to have buddies to work together. And it's better that Turkey and Israel be friends than have a chilly relationship. Very, very simple. So I'm going to be optimistic until I'm disabused of it.
All right, Mark, I'm going to leave it on your optimistic note. Really appreciate you being with us. Mark Meirowitz in New York. Thanks for that.